Hello, right, this is going to be my second attempt at a January session, and I've tried to keep everything in the same case today. I've got a couple of effects going off in Ableton as well, but I'll talk those through as we go through it. So what I'll do is I will just play it through, so just so you get a basic idea of what's going on here. We've got a super saw playing lead here with the chainsaw, we've got a bass line with the 1116. That's everything that's going on here. We got a kick and we got some hats, but that's it. So I'll play this through, see what you think. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, let me know. But what we'll do is, after I've played it through, this time I'm going to try and go through a good patch breakdown, because I know a lot of you were asking about that last time. So let's start by playing this through, and then we'll get into the breakdown. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Didn't quite go to plan, a few mishaps here and there, but you kind of get the idea. Okay, right, let's break this down then. So what's going on? So we've gone more melodic over the last couple of days, as you can probably tell. And I'm trying to make use of the chainsaw a lot more. I've had the chainsaw quite a while. I haven't really used it a lot because the melodic stuff that I do, I haven't really had a good way of sequencing it. I mean, I've got a nerd tech, which is great for creating tracker kind of things where you're pre-programming everything. But I kind of prefer to just set something up, get it going, and then kind of perform it, which is what I've been doing with the Symphonium, which is why I really, really like the Symphonium. So I'm really getting back into this, the chainsaw. So let's start with the chainsaw here, and we'll just go through the patch setup, and then we'll come on to the bass afterwards. So the chainsaw has a chord coming out of Symphonium. So we've got this D sharp or E flat minor chord, standard minor. We've got 1, 2, and 3 out. We're not using the 4th one here, so you can see that our chord here is the root, the 11th, and the 13th coming out of 1, 2, and 3. And they're going into the 3 inputs to create the chord on the chainsaw. Now, the chainsaw is then going out left and right because it's stereo. I've got 2 javelins here for envelopes. So the left is going into this javelin, the right is going into this javelin, and then I'm splitting them up into a stereo filter here. So as you can see, the left input is a bit difficult to see, but the left input of the chainsaw is coming through javelin and into the A input. The second one is going into the B input, and then I'll explain how this filter is working when I fire up a bit of sound here. It's easier to explain. Then the javelin is being triggered by Metropolix, and you can see here that I'm using both channels of Metropolix. This isn't actually needed, so we could actually just do that. But we've got channel 2 here going into 1, not quite sure why I mix them up, it's probably not as easy to understand, and channel 1 of the gate going into the second channel of javelin. Right, so let's turn up the A side of the left side of the chainsaw. Now the left side of the chainsaw is coming through this side of the filter, and this side is set as a low pass filter. So if I just turn up, because we're coming out of these dipole outputs, they're coming through this stereo frequency. So let's turn this up. So this is the A side of the chainsaw. In fact, let's just lower the resonance, make it a little bit easier to understand. So there we go, low pass filter. And then if we go over to the other side, the right output, over here, I've got a bandpass filter. And the bandpass filter has its spread turned up quite high, which means that when we're right down, we're actually getting something through. And then as we go up, so by the time we got to 12 o'clock, that bandpass filter is almost gone. And then combine the two. Start with the bandpass filter here. As we increase, then the low pass filtered main side comes through as well. So we get this nice cut over. And then what I was doing later was I was increasing the resonance. And then as we bring this down, you get a nice sweep. Okay, and then just to create some natural variation here, I've got a couple of LFOs coming out at slightly different speeds into either side, so it's just altering the frequency here. So if we leave the stereo dipole around there, you'll just hear it just start going up and down on either side. Okay, back over to our gate sequencer here. So track 2 is going into our main side, so let's just fire up the main side, which is here. This is track 2. Track 2 has a length of 8, and we've got 2 steps on 2 and 2 on 8, so that's giving us a total of 10 steps. Step 2 is a single trigger, and it only plays, I think, how often does that play? It's only playing 33% of the time. It just gives us a little bit of a natural break up here. So by the time we add the kick, now both sides of the chainsaw sidechain to the kick in Ableton, so that's why we're getting that pumping sound. We turn it off, the pumping will stop. Couldn't quite fit my compressor in here. But if you were trying to create something similar, then if you had something like the Modular kick-ain, you could send everything through that, and then that would sidechain it. I just don't have one of those. Okay, so there's our main voice. Okay, let's move over to the bassline now. So this is my default bassline setup, so let's just turn this up. Now, what have I got on here? Let me just set this to bass. Right, so I have one note coming out, which is in the same scale as my chord here, which is going through the arpeggio. And then this fourth output here, you can see from the arpeggio, it's wrapped around here and it comes out and it plays 1 volt for octave into our bass line. Now, I'm only playing the root note here, but if we increase the range, you see the range come up on here. As soon as we hit 12, it will start playing octaves. So there we have an octave, bring in the kick. Now, because that's only 2 notes, that's playing in time with the kick, so that doesn't sound very bassliney to me. So let's increase another octave. This time we'll get 3 root notes. And against the 4 on the floor, that sounds a lot better. Now you can probably hear some effects going through here, which I don't have, so this is just coming out here into channel 3. Channel 3 here on the ES9. In Ableton, I've got a... Let me just go and have a look. Yeah, so I've got a slight ping pong filter on there, just spreading out that sound a little bit, just giving it a bit more, giving it a bit of stereo. And that sounds quite good against the kick. And then the only other drums we've got here, just some hats. And then if we bring back in our main voice, sweep the filter, that starts increasing the bandpass side here, but then also opening up the low pass filter. It's a nice cutover. See that cutover there? So we're just on a filtered bandpass there. And as that filtered bandpass opens up, you then just start hearing the low pass side come through. There. So you get this nice effect where you're splitting up the left and right sides. And then what I was doing was just playing the chainsaw manually here, so we've just got this chord playing here. And then, so it's only playing 3 notes, so it'll play the lowest 3 notes. So if I add the 3rd and the 5th, it will just play the root 3rd and the 5th. So yeah, just playing the simple vamp here. I could have programmed this in, but I kind of prefer to play it, it's a bit more fun. Probably noticed I messed it up a couple of times. And then I had a little tiny bit of Mimeophon in here, so let's just bring in the Mimeophon. Arguably doesn't need it, so it's just a very reverby and high pitch, just a tiny little bit of mixing in there, a little bit of delay. And that's just really there to just open up the saw here. Oh, for anyone that's interested in the chainsaw here, now what I've got, let me just, this is a simple chainsaw. So this is just, if you can see here, this is on a saw wave, which we can blend in a square. Start hearing there, I'll go all the way to a square. If we just start off with the saw, that sounds quite thin. But then if we start detuning all of the oscillators in here, I think there's 6, someone will correct me if I'm wrong. If we start detuning them, then we get a sound that's much more familiar. Sorry, let me just take these LFOs out of my filter, just so we get a consistent sound. So that's all in tune, and then detune them. And that's how we get the super saw. So yeah, chainsaw, very simple module, not cheap for what it is, but if you want a super saw, detune, you can even bring in the square wave. Prefer that sound? Let's put our filters back on. So yeah, that's all I'm using Symphonian for here. Anyone that's wondering what this is or are interested in why it's got so many buttons on here, all I'm using is the chord output at the minute. You can actually program different chord progressions in here. I'm just using standard chord output and a very, very simple arpeggiator. So if we bring our bass line back up, that's just playing octaves. I take that range down to 1 octave. Play a chord, well, an arpeggio, root 3rd and 5th. Go up to 2 octaves. So you've got an arpeggio that's very, very controllable. You can increase the pitch. If you don't want to if you don't want to worry, once you're in tune, you're in tune. You can just change the pitch here. So let's just put that back where we were, which was on 2 octaves. And chords. So you've got a chord generator, you've got an arpeggio, you've then got 3 different quantizers here. So if you want to send some random CV in, you could send random CV into channel 1 here and say I want to play a root, a 3rd, 5th and 7th, and it will just create that chord. And each one of these is slightly different. So this one's got the ability to have an A and a B section that you can trigger between, so you could start off playing rather than a fixed arpeggio, you can play a randomized arpeggio and then add maybe just a root note every time it switches between the A and B section. That just gives a little bit more of an anchored bass line. And then channel 2 here has more options than channel 1, but in a different way. And then channel 3 is a little bit more straightforward. But yeah, so you've got 3 quantizers, a chord generator, and an arpeggio. So yeah, there's quite a lot in here. That is just the very basics that it does. It's got a whole chord sequencer as well. You're not going to generate an entire thing. There's no gate sequencer, it's just a chord sequencer, but you can create an entire sequence song in here and then just use something else like Metropolix or whatever else you've got for your main gate trigger. So yeah, it's really, really useful. What else were we doing? Another thing, what else were we doing here? So on the bass line here, I was actually playing the bass line. So as we took the main lead down, filtered it down so that the bass line started coming through more, I made this a little bit more of an acid bass line, increased the resonance. So something like that. And then I was playing it as well. So channel A here of step E, you see that this is just moving. So this is a 32-step sequence. Just very, very subtle difference here between the two sections. But because we're in the loopy mode here, this yellow button, this allows us to play it. So if we play a note that's not existent, stops the bass line. If we hold down a note, then it effectively makes every note active. So I was playing it like this, just holding that down, creating rest by holding down the next note. Or holding down these two so that it creates every other note, and then just alternating. So rather than having rest and every note on, it just keeps something going instead of completely cutting out the bass line. And that creates quite a nice effect. And then just move the chords. And then I think the final thing that I went through was I was just messing around with the gate sequencer here. So let's set our bass line a little bit. Let's set it back to something a bit more simple, like so. Bring up the saw. Now, this sequence here, I've turned off step 4, so that's always a rest. Now if I increase that to 3 steps, it creates an extra rest. So we've always got a guaranteed rest of 3 steps here and a 33% chance of playing this 2-step one. So that stutters things. And if we wanted to create a really long note, just leave that rested. Then I've got step 6 here on the top, which will basically play a long open gate. If we increase this, that will remain open. And that just keeps some interest. So yeah, that's the patch. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to keep trying to do some patches for January. I like to just do at least one a week, do something completely different, and see where it goes. So yeah, just as a quick rundown again, super saw coming from the chainsaw. Separating out the left and the right stereo channels into different sides of the filter so that we can blend a bandpass filter and a low pass filtered version of it. I didn't actually show the difference between the gates here really. So track 2 is going into here, which is the full 8 steps long. Track 1 is only 6 steps long though. So you can hear a slightly different pattern. So this is the bandpass filtered, which is actually quite that's more simple. We switch over to the other one. See here we've created 2 different rhythms there. Bring them both in. So yeah, from the humble chainsaw, we've got 2 envelopes and VCAs, a dedicated gate sequencer and a dedicated chord sequencer. So there's the oscillator and then the supporting modules if we include Mimeophon here is this entire part of the case. So if there's one word of advice I've got for people, if you're new and you're getting into this, is don't do what I did and think you have to buy every different oscillator you can find because they'll produce you a different sound. That is true, but your voices, look, I've only got 2 voices in here and they're tiny, and I've created an entire track out of it. It's everything else that you need, and that's something that I got wrong when I was getting into Eurorack. So if I can give you one word of advice, just find something that you think, yep, that sounds good, quite like it, you know, if you're into noise engineering stuff, or you want something like a nice simple bass line here. And this is a simple all-in-one voice. You've got resonance, filters, you've got filter effects, pretty much in a similar way to Atlantis, but cut down into a much smaller and, dare I say it, cheaper. You could probably get about 3 or 4 of these for the price of an Atlantis. A little bit fiddly getting in here, but yeah, you've got an envelope in there, you've got octaves. It's quite a feature-rich little device. I don't tend to automatically modulate it. It's kind of time to set it as a bass line, because listen to that, that sounds pretty good. And if you want to crank a little bit of... That's all I want in a bass line. So yeah, highly recommend that. If you're new, do I recommend the chainsaw? Well, I bought it, but I didn't manage to get the most out of it until I've done something like this. So you know, if you've got a couple of low pass gates, gate triggers, multiple filters, and the ability to melodically sequence it, then, you know, look, this is what I've got set up. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. So I'll make a little bit different today, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.